Hwayi, a monster boy, begins by showing a group of kidnappers who realize that the suitcase where the ransom money they took has been tracked by the police. To trick the police, the kidnapping syndicate split into two teams. The first team retrieves the ransom briefcase hidden in a train, and the second team takes a young boy hostage. However, their plan did not go smoothly because the police managed to find out the whereabouts of the first team and cornered them in the train. Meanwhile, one of the policemen named Chung-ho, who is in cahoots with the kidnapping syndicate, then reports about the ambush to the team that took the boy hostage in the car. However, they don't seem to care much about it, because the kidnapping syndicate members are very experienced in dealing with the police who surround them. Sure enough, the first team on the train managed to beat the police and escape from there. After that, the kidnappers finally return to their hiding place on a deserted farm in the middle of a forest. The male kidnappers are Suk-tae, the cold but charismatic leader, Ki-tae, a stammering driving expert, Jin-sung, an ideal planner, Bom-soo, a guns expert, and Dong-bom, a cold martial artist. Failing to get a ransom, they plan to kill the boy. However, the leader, Suk-tae, decides to keep the boy alive and sends a woman named Young-ju to take care of him. News of the police failing to apprehend the kidnapping syndicate immediately spread throughout the country, where the kidnapping case was named the Goblin Case. Long story short, 14 years later, Suk-tae and his crew committed a robbery at a luxury house, where at that time, the owner of the house was being massaged by a blind man. Because the man who owned the house tried to put up a fight, they were forced to kill the man. Presuming that the masseuse is really blind, Suk-tae and his gang decide to keep the blind man alive and rush off with their loot. The robbery was discovered by the police, who immediately came to the location and chased them. However, the cops are tricked by a young man named Hwayi, who is part of Suk-tae's criminal syndicate. Hwayi turns out to be the boy who used to be a kidnapped victim of Suk-tae's criminal syndicate, who has been brought up uniquely and learning skills from his five fathers instead of going to school. Hwayi, disguised as a student, manages to carry out his duties so that Suk-tae and his crew can escape from the police. On the way home, Hwayi accidentally meets a girl named Yu-kyung who asks him about his name and school. However, Hwayi doesn't say anything and just hands her an orange. Arriving home, Hwayi is greeted by his five fathers, who commend him for a job well done. Even though Suk-tae and his crew are criminals, they treat Hwayi well and treat him as their own son. They also don't chain Young-ju anymore since the woman took care of Hwayi from a young age. Although Hwayi never received a formal education at school, his five fathers taught Hwayi various things, including shooting. Hwayi is also taught to do various physical activities, although he has a hidden talent, namely painting. One day, one of Suk-tae's crews, Jin-sung, gets a job from the cop who conspired with them, Chung-ho, to kill a priest named Hyung-taek, because the man refuses to sell his house to a businessman named Jin. On the other hand, the police, who are investigating the robbery case of Suk-tae and his crew, are at a stalemate because the only witness in the robbery case is a blind man. The police then summoned a policeman named Jong-min to interrogate the blind man. In a quirky way, Jong-min manages to get a little clue about the robbers smelling like cactus plants and such, since Suk-tae and his crew do have a shop that sells various ornamental plants. Knowing that the police have a lead in the robbery case, Chung-ho rushes to tell Suk-tae and his crew to take quick action before the police catch them. The gang plans another crime to see Hwayi participate for the first time, where Hwayi has to kill someone. Suk-tae apparently orders Hwayi to kill the blind masseur. However, because this was his first mission killing someone, Hwayi was so nervous that his hands were shaking and he couldn't do his job. Even though Ki-tae manages to kidnap the blind masseur, Suk-tae doesn't hesitate to punish Hwayi for failing to carry out his duties and locks him in the basement. Suk-tae, who has a cruel temper, always educates Hwayi in a very strict and disciplined way, so the young man is very afraid of Suk-tae. After solving their problem regarding the blind masseur, Suk-tae and his crew then make a plan with Chung-ho regarding the murder they will carry out against Hyung-taek. After getting paid in advance, and where Hyung-taek is, they immediately carry out the assassination and bring Hwayi to come with them, because Hwayi has an important role in the assassination plot. Hwayi does his job to break into Hyung-taek's house and pave the way for Suk-tae and his crew to kill the man. Once inside the house, Hwayi finds an old photo of a boy who looks exactly like him when he was little. On the other hand, realizing the presence of an unknown person in her house, Hyung-taek's wife then hides while calling her husband and asking him to come home immediately. Hwayi, who finds Hyung-taek's wife's hiding place, decides to keep the woman there and hides her whereabouts from Suk-tae and his crew. Long story short, Hyung-taek, who finally arrived home, was immediately beaten badly by Suk-tae and his crew. Meanwhile, Hwayi decides to let Hyung-taek's wife escape from there in order to save her. Because of this, Suk-tae becomes furious and punishes Hwayi by ordering him to kill Hyung-taek. At first, his fingers tremble and the gun shakes, but after one shot, Hwayi keeps pulling the trigger as though possessed. After carrying out the killing action, Suk-tae and his crew rushed away from there. Not long after, Jong-min arrives at the scene to investigate Hyung-taek's murder case and finds clues from the umbrella Hwayi accidentally left behind. After searching for information about buying the umbrella, Jong-min finally arrives at the ornamental plant shop run by Jin Song. On the other hand, Hwayi looks very down and frustrated after killing someone. He keeps staring at the old photo of the boy he took from Hyung-taek's house. When Young-ju sees the photo, the woman immediately recognizes that the boy is Hwayi because she's the one who raised him. Hwayi, curious about his past, secretly sneaks into Hyung-taek's house to look for clues about the boy who is most likely his past self. However, when Hwayi is there, suddenly Hyung-taek's wife comes home, so Hwayi decides to go upstairs and hide in a room. The room seemed to be a boy's room with clothes and toys neatly arranged, but then, Hwayi finds a pile of newspapers reporting on the kidnapping of a boy 14 years ago, and how shocked Hwayi is when he finds out that he was the boy. Hwayi feels even more frustrated when he realizes that he has killed his biological father, who was none other than Hyung-taek. On the other hand, Hyung-taek's wife is trying to end her life after her husband's death. Knowing this, Hwayi rushes to save her because he doesn't want to lose the only family he has in this world. Meanwhile, Suk-tae and his crew seem to be confused about Hwayi's whereabouts. While Suk-tae and the others are out, Hwayi then sneaks into Jin Song's office to confront him about the truth about his past being Hyung-taek's biological son. Because Jin Song refuses to tell the truth, Hwayi ends up killing him, and vows revenge on his gangster fathers using the devious skills he picked up from a life in crime. Elsewhere, CEO Jin, who ordered Hyung-taek's assassination, gets word that Hyung-taek's wife is still alive, so they can't continue their previously planned infrastructure development project. Because of that, the man then ordered his henchman, a man named Ji-won, to solve the problem. Ji-won then goes to Chong-ho and threatens him to kill Hyung-taek's wife. Having no other choice, Chong-ho then orders one of his men to kill Hyung-taek's wife, who is being treated at the hospital after trying to end her life. However, the attempt failed because Hwayi was always there to take care of his mother. Knowing that he has to take revenge on Suk-tae and his crew so that they won't bother his mother anymore, Hwayi asks Yukyong to take care of his mother for a while. Long story short, Hwayi sneaks into the residence of Suk-tae and his crew to steal some weapons. However, his actions were caught by Bom-soo, and they were involved in a fierce fight, in which Hwayi finally escaped from there with some weapons and equipment. Suk-tae and his crew rushed to chase Hwayi, and they were involved in a pretty tense chase, which ended in Suk-tae and his crew losing track of Hwayi after their car was destroyed in a fairly violent collision. On the other hand, Jong-min finds clues about Hwayi, who was kidnapped by Suk-tae and his crew 14 years ago, and tries to find his whereabouts. Later that night, Suk-tae gets a call from Hwayi, asking him to come over to where they kidnapped him 14 years ago. Suk-tae and his crew then rush over there to meet him, but as it turned out, it was all a trap. Hwayi had previously gone to CEO Jin and told him that Suk-tae and his crew had information on the whereabouts of Hyung-taek's wife. Hearing this, CEO Jin immediately orders Ji-won and all his men to confront Suk-tae and his crew. When they finally meet at the appointed place, he immediately shoots one of Ji-won's men to stir up discord between them. Fights and shootouts are inevitable. In the end, Suk-tae won the fight even though he had to lose Bom-soo and Dong-bom. On the other hand, Ki-tae manages to find out where Hwayi is and tries to persuade him to stop everything. Hwayi actually has no intention of killing Ki-tae because he is the closest and most caring person to him. However, Ki-tae is accidentally killed when he falls from a height. Meanwhile, Suk-tae, who received word from Chong-ho that he had managed to find the whereabouts of Hyung-taek's wife, then rushed over there to kill her. Hwayi, who is still mourning Ki-tae's death, suddenly gets a call from Yukyong telling him that his mother has just been transferred from the treatment room. Yukyong also tells that she's being chased by Chong-ho and is hiding in the toilet. Upon hearing that, Hwayi rushed to the hospital to save his mother and also Yukyong. But on the way, Hwayi gets into an accident. Elsewhere, Jong-min gets important clues about the goblin case and finds the residence of Suk-tae and his crew, where he meets Young-ju, who tells him everything. Arriving at the hospital, Suk-tae immediately killed Chong-ho and rushed to Hyung-taek's wife's treatment room. Suk-tae takes out his gun and then tells about himself caring for and raising Hwayi to become a murderer, where Hwayi then kills his biological father as revenge against Hyung-taek himself. Suk-tae reveals that he, Hyung-taek, Young-ju, and Ki-tae once grew up together in an orphanage. When he was a teenager, Suk-tae fell in love with Young-ju, but she liked Hyung-taek instead. An annoyed Suk-tae then bullied Young-ju and became a criminal to this day. After telling everything, Suk-tae then kills Hyung-taek's wife and leaves. Meanwhile, Hwayi, who rushed to the hospital, even though he was badly injured in an accident, seemed very frustrated and angry because he did not manage to save his beloved mother. Elsewhere, Jong-min begins to realize that Hwayi is involved with Suk-tae's gang, then tries to find his whereabouts. However, young Ju's maternal instincts want to protect Hwayi because he is actually innocent, and only carries out orders from Suk-tae. Because of that, young Ju was finally forced to hit Jong-min's head, knocking him unconscious. Not long after, Suk-tae arrives home and tortures young Ju over a trivial matter. At the same time, Hwayi arrives there, and immediately points a gun at Suk-tae. Unexpectedly, Jong-min gets up again and then points his gun at Suk-tae, who threatens to kill young Ju. But then, Suk-tae shoots Jong-min, killing him, and threatens Hwayi that he will kill young Ju. Not wanting to lose a woman who has been a good mother figure to him, Hwayi decides to kneel down, and asks Suk-tae not to kill her. Suk-tae then approaches Hwayi, and says that from now on he will do everything for Hwayi. However, Hwayi turns out to be just pretending, and then kills Suk-tae, who dies with a smile because his son is now the monster he always wanted him to become. Sometime after the incident, Hwayi presented a camera to Yu-kyung as a form of gratitude to her for taking care of his mother. Upon learning that CEO Jin was the mastermind behind his parents' murder, Hwayi sneaks into the crowd and kills the man. The film ends by showing Hwayi visiting young Ju at the hospital, and she smiles at him. The moral we can learn from this film is never to educate a child to be a murderer. And always remember that not all monsters look like monsters. There are some that carry their monstrosity inside.